This is Casey Jost, and you're listening to the Man Cave Chronicles podcast with Elias. And I'm Casey Jost. And if you want to see what's going on with me, good luck.
Welcome to another episode of the Man Cave Chronicles.
Welcome to the party, pal!
You're my boy, Blue!
Yo, Adrian!
A podcast with interviews of amazing guests from the world of pop culture.
Oh, yeah!
TV.
Nice!
Movies.
Oh, I love the movies!
Comedy and more. From deep inside the Man Cave, your host, Elias.
Casey, welcome to the cave.
It's great to be here. It's decorated so well. What a beautiful cave. It's different. It's more of a man cave than it is a traditional, cave that maybe a caveman would have.
Right. How are you, man?
I'm pretty good. It is funny. I never really thought about how man cave is a flip on caveman. That's fun.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Do most of your guests break down the name of your podcast?
They kind of do like a similar intro like you, like, oh, it's great to be here. I had a few comedians come on here saying dark in here, turn the lights on.
Nice.
The good old stuff.
We're all the same.
There you go. How's that quarantine life treating you?
Not great. I was going to say not bad, but I think I would lead with not great. I mean, it's just tragic in the way that like it's hard to see family because of the guilt that you would get if God forbid anything happened. So I in general like to see a lot of people, not just family. I like to see friends and just people on the street without masks. I mean, I'm glad to see them wearing masks. That's my stance, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just hard to connect with people.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And now it's getting to the point where you're more like, we need this to end. Hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Because, like, some people, it's getting to them mentally, like, just they can't do anything.
It's getting to me. I mean, for sure. I completely, I identify with anybody who's feeling like lost or, like I just recently also got a dog, and that's like made the quarantine all over again because it's a puppy. So I'm kind of like, not only she just got her shot so she could go outside, but for 2 weeks, like I couldn't take her really on the streets of Brooklyn. And it was kind of this thing of like, wow, I can't believe I'm like now double handcuffed. But you get I'm also getting a new perspective on something. So there's like a lot of love there. I have like a new job, which is a puppy, which is fun, learning experiences, but it's defeating.
Right. So man, you've been busy for a few years now. And actually I got a funny little story, but we'll talk about that. You're the senior producer of Impractical Jokers. You're the writer. I mean, you've done everything for that show, and you've also performed at UCB, right?
Yeah. So,
do you ever have, instead of the quarantine and everything, do you ever have any downtime before that?
Yeah, a good amount. We'd have a lot of like in between seasons where we would have. It's funny is like right before the quarantine, right before we started in like January. We had like 3 months off. It was the largest break that the Jokers had ever gotten. Like there'd be times that like the writers or, the producers and all, everybody who works on the show would have some time off, but the guys would always tour and do other like, promos for things. And, they were working on their live show, and then we'd be filming constantly. So they never really in like almost 8 years or something, they really didn't have much time off. And then they got a solid, like 3 months off.
Wow.
So we were happy for them, although I hate to not work. But it was weird to have like 3 months off and then start up work, and then within a month or two have to stop. I think 2.5 months or 2.25 months. And it was wild because the guys, now I was talking to them, I was like, isn't it insane that you were like begging for a break? And then when we came back like soon or something, even after 3 months, and now it's like, wow, I'd love to be working.
Right. So funny story. We met a few years ago when the Impractical Jokers toured at the Bushnell, Connecticut. Do you remember that show?
Oh, wow. I mean, how long ago was that now?
So I was trying to remember what year it was, but it was like the episode that aired before the show was the Scoopsy Potatoes. Okay, which episode? Wow. What season was that? Do you remember?
I think that's season 3.
Okay. So it was before the Jokers like blew up to even bigger what they are now.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, every season has sort of gotten bigger in a weird way. You just don't expect it.
Yeah. So we met there, and I remember you opened for them.
Hmm.
You did a few jokes on, and then you also played the guitar. Also, man, how exciting was it doing something like that?
Yeah, it was. It's always really fun to open for those guys, because the audience is there to have fun. The audience, like, the Joker audiences are really fun. And then, you know, uh, that show is probably like the biggest show I had done at the time. And then every time I've opened for them, the shows have gotten bigger. Like we did Radio City Music Hall around like December or so.
Yeah.
And that was really insane. That was one that I'll like. That's like a landmark show that I'll never forget.
So you're originally from New York, right?
Yeah, from Staten Island.
Yeah. How was it growing up there?
It was good. I had a really I think one of the problems in my comedic career is I had such a good childhood. I think I should have been struggling more. I think I'd be better off for it in some ways, but no, it was pretty great, and I had a lot of fun, a lot of good friends, and a lot of people to bounce ideas off of and collaborate with and have fun.
So like when you're growing up, like how old were you when you kind of had an idea that you wanted to get into the comedy world and writing and producing?
I guess I was like a kid that was a fan of like Chris Farley, and I was like a chubby kid. And so I definitely like identified with, wanting to make people laugh. I liked physical humor. I liked like kind of improvisational or situational stuff like in class. So I remember at a young age, like making my friends laugh and then saying things like, "You're funny," and loving that feeling. So, and then the other part was like meeting other people who I found funny and laughing with them. And so that's kind of what the ride has been like with like Jokers and stuff like that, or any show or any project I've gone. That's what I like seek, is like just laughing with other people and making stuff.
So like, I mean, everybody knows your brother Colin from SNL and everything. Like, what's the age gap between you two?
3 years. He's 3 years older. I'd like to say I'm like 10 years grayer.
10 years gray, yeah. So like when you guys were like growing up and everything, did you guys like do projects together? Like, did you like both talk like this is what we want to do when we get older? Like, what was the whole thing like growing up with each other like that?
I would say no. Like, I think at a younger age, we didn't get along. We're like, we fought like brothers do.
Yeah.
Like 3 years apart, which is like, if we were a little closer, I feel like I'd be able to like give him a run for his money. And then like, we'd like have that mutual respect because we're both like maybe competitive. I was just a little too far away that he could like dominate me in most things. and then also not far enough away that he was like a mentor, although like growing like later in life, just I lead by, he leads, I follow his example. Is that what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
But so I think like growing up, we didn't get along, but I think there was something in both of us that we both liked to perform. We had a very like kind of talkative grandfather and mother. My dad had a really weird sense of humor. So I think we liked comedy, but it's not like we both had a conversation of like, this is the plan.
Right.
And then throughout high school, we had, I remember in like 7th grade or so, our parents got us into a theater. It's like a summer theater camp, which was funny because like all our friends from school were going to the exact same camp, but for sports. So they'd be walking in with like baseball bats and gloves, and we'd be like going in with our scarves and our. No, not exactly, but we just but that was something I really liked to do. Is perform into that. I'll continue doing that in high school, and I really liked doing improv, and I liked performing more, and he liked writing more. And then then we sort of switched in that. Like he was performing a lot, and I was both kind of started at different places and ended up in, I can't even say the same place because obviously he's in a really, really good place.
Oh yeah, definitely. So how did that conversation go? Like even like with your parents and everything, like when you first told them like, I want to this is what I want to do. This is the industry I want to get into.
Yeah, I think, it's never exactly like I'm going to sit down and talk to my parents about it. It was just that I was pursuing, a thing that I cared about, and I didn't really care what they thought because I always had a side job. And so I was always kind of, working and making money, like having multiple jobs. Like if I was like a waiter or like I gave, guitar and, music lessons. And I did like a grounds crew at a swim club, and I also taught diving at the same swim club because I grew up doing that. So I always, like, I'd always have these, like, influxes of, like, I sometimes have like 3 jobs at a time and then have 1 job. So I was always working and making money. So I don't think they were worried about, like, at that point, my motivation to work. But I do think that my mom always wanted me to have a backup, whether it be like education, like in college more so. She was like, you get a teaching degree because then you could teach whatever, music or something, and still do comedy on the side. They were always like, oh, you're going to do arts in some capacity. They always were like, you're going to do comedy. They just assumed it because it was the only thing. It was like almost the only extracurricular thing I really wanted to do in like high school and college. Like I played some sports and stuff, but they knew that wasn't what drove me. And they knew I wasn't going to be a professional diver. But that was so I think like once I started getting into it and getting some jobs, they kind of loosened up, although my mom still wanted me to be a firefighter up until like actually today. She would still if I was like, hey mom, can you get me in the fire department? She'd be like, I will try the hardest I can to make that happen. Because my whole family like all came from like city jobs. Like my grandfather was a firefighter, my mom worked for the fire department, and like all her uncles were firemen. And so it was like a situation where it's not so much that she didn't want me to follow my dreams, but she was like also like the stability and the brotherhood that comes along with the fire department is something that I think you'd really do well with and enjoy. So there was that was, I wouldn't say it was pressure though.
So when I was doing some research on you, I read that you did the UCB. How did you there's some big names that came out of that school. Like, how did you get involved with that?
So in college, like I said, I was doing like some, a lot of improv and, some stand up and stuff. And I had some roommates that, we had just talked about what we had heard from the UCB theater, which was sort of a legendary, even at the time, a legendary like theater that was coming up because, you had like the Groundlings in LA and other schools. And then you have Second City in Chicago and other, schools. But those were the big ones. And then UCB was like the one that was going to be the New York one. And it was already becoming that because of the talent that was coming out of it. And so my friend Matt and I, who also, kind of went through the UCB program, he's now in LA, Matt Cohen, he's a great writer. He and I just talked about doing UCB when we graduate, and I graduated first. And so I did it. And I just, started taking classes there. And then, 5 years later, it took me to get on like a house team. And then I just kind of stayed in that system. And I stayed on a house team for like another 5 years. And then I got moved to a weekend team. And these are words that might not make sense, but it was just sort of a, putting in the time and effort and learning this, form, which is like just improv, but like long form, and just getting reps like any stand-up comedian would.
Yeah.
And, shows that are at UCB, but also at the other theaters and or anywhere else, like a weird bar and like the corner of a bar that's like a terrible basement show, but it still introduces you to people, like it introduced me to my wife and introduced me to some of my closest friends and collaborators, and has probably helped me get jobs. It's actually like Sal from Impractical Jokers was wearing a UCB shirt, and I had known him through like some stuff, like some smaller stuff he had done online with the Tenderloins comedy. So I saw that he had a UCB shirt, and I was like, oh, that's a way I could talk to him. I'll say that I'm taking classes, which I was. And then that kind of is the spark that like got us kind of talking all the time, and him giving me free drinks at a bar just to hang out longer.
So while you're like doing UCB, like what was like your goal at first? Was it like just improv? You want to try to keep with improv, or was it more like stand-up comedy?
Yeah, there was a scene at UCB that like I still don't even feel like I fully got in, even though like I definitely did all the steps, but there was this sort of like culture there that was like, like any like club kind of like, you have to get in or something. And I guess I didn't fully care about that, although I knew about it, and like I kind of like was aware of it, and whether at certain times I was like invited to things, or I don't know how to describe it. It sounds like elitist, and it is in some ways, but I just wanted to meet other people that I liked, that and follow like the protocol, or like the pattern that sort of worked for people is like you take classes, you take like, there's a 101 or 201 up to like a 501, and now there's even like an advanced study thing. Just take all the classes, as many, as I could afford, and then hopefully get on a team. You audition. I auditioned like 3 or 4 times. I got on a team, and then just stay on a team and like until, my quote unquote career takes off. But that's just, there's so many people doing it. Not everyone can be, like a Rob Riggle or Aziz Ansari or, Donald Glover. No, and not everyone can be those people. So it's the kind of thing of like, I realized that pretty quickly and was like, oh, I'm just going to enjoy this ride, which is that thing that you always hear is like live in the present or whatever. And I really just enjoyed it. Like we had practice once a week and a show once a week. And like those teams that I was on, like I said, like it was really just like we were close friends. I barely remember most of the shows, but like I could remember just like all the laughs and like we'd go away together. So it was really just, I guess my new plan at that point, instead of like, oh, I'm doing this for the, to get huge, it was just like, oh, I'm having so much fun and continuing in this like art form that I care about. It was like, oh, that's the goal now, is just to be able to do this as long as possible. And I was continuing, like up until quarantine, I was still doing a show every Saturday night at UCB. So,
and of course, and you still perform stand-up too, right?
Yeah, I more infrequently. I do it, and then I'll kind of get tired of like my set, because I think because of the improv nature of things, I definitely like making up new stuff all the time. So I'll always say yes to almost every opportunity. So if anyone's like, oh, hey, do you want to do my show? I'll be like, yes. And then I'll get like, maybe I'll do a few shows leading up to that show. Like when the guys asked me to do Radio City, I think at that point I hadn't done a show maybe in like a month, let's say, or 2 months or something. Maybe not that much, but then I'm like, okay, I got to book like 3 shows before I do this show. Right. And then I'll try out and work on that set until that Radio City show. And that's sort of now at the level where I'm at. Whereas in the past, I would just seek any show I could or meet people who did shows and try to, but really I'm not like a stand-up. Like, I think if a stand-up comedian that I knew was listening to this, they'd be like, oh, Casey does stand-up, because I would do it as much as I can, but I'm also not going to clubs. I'm not waiting in line at like, the comic strip would probably, you can't do that. It's not like that, but no. Yes, that is it. The comic strip would like allow stand-ups at like midnight,
right? Yeah.
Kind of come in, sign up on a list. And if there's room, you could get on it, but you might not perform. I was thinking that the Cellar, like you have to actually audition and all that stuff. But yeah, like I'm not that kind of person, because I also had luckily always had a job since like around 2010. So like in comedy. So I wanted to kind of focus on that as well and not do stand up as much. And additionally, I'm lazy. I'm a little bit lazy. That like, I'm not going to, I still do shows constantly with like improv, but it's tough sometimes to like work a full day and go to maybe like an improv rehearsal and then try to do stand up, or whatever the week is like. But I probably could have hustled a little bit more and been farther in stand up, but,
you want to do what you have passion for too.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, like you had mentioned before with like playing guitar, like in the comedy bits, like I've always really loved that kind of stuff too, and trying to incorporate music into my stand-up and like more of a variety. Yeah.
I was told to ask you, are you still in the band there, Less Vinyl?
Yeah. Oh yeah, sort of. Well, so we that band that we've been playing with for a long time, I grew up like playing in bands, and I feel like I'll always write songs that are just like a rock song or something. I don't know how to describe it. That's not like a comedic song. But I want to do a new record with them. We haven't done one in a couple of years. And I had released like 3 kind of solo albums that were just like I said, just like songs that I had been recording on my own. And then I kind of had the idea recently, like, oh, some of these songs would fit really well with the band. So I've been like kind of seeing if they fit with them. I thought it would be easier to record at this point in the year. I thought it would be like, oh, if we're like in a somewhat ventilated area, we could take turns recording, but I think it's still kind of dicey in July of 2020.
Oh yeah. So how did you get your start with the Impractical Jokers?
So, it was a pretty small show. So I think people might think like, oh, like I must have had to submit packets and, got on their radar like you would with any other show. But remember, when this show started, it was like not a show. it was a pilot, and then it got picked up for 8 episodes, but it hadn't aired yet. On TRU TV, which was like a brand new network, or a network that was just starting to try comedy. They had done, reality television. So it wasn't a process like that. The process was that I knew Sal, and we were like doing a lot of comedy stuff together on the island with some other friends. And he was like, "Hey, I'm starting this show." At this point, I had written for a Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. I was there for 6 months and then was just kind of let go. And then he was like, "Hey, we're doing this pilot. I don't know if or this show, like, because the pilot they had already filmed like during that time. They were like, we don't have really room for like a writer, but if you want a PA." And I was like, hell yeah. You know what I mean? Like I just came from like a network show, and I was like, I don't care. I would love to work with my friend Sal. Like, I'm going to check my ego and just be like, yeah, it's going to be fun. And it was like backbreaking work. It was like picking up vans at 4 a.m. I would also be like writing comedy stuff, like with the guys, like coming up with ideas, like since the beginning, and in meetings, like, oh, what should this show be like? We're still kind of carving out what the vibe of the show was in some ways early on. But that was kind of the process, was like Sal vouched for me. I met the other guys, and then eventually, because not even right away, but eventually they sort of accepted me that I had good ideas. Because, you got to remember, like the 4 of them are this like really tight knit comedy group that have been working together for a long time. And here I am, just a friend of Sal's. So they were like, who's this person? And then like to their credit, they gave me a real chance. And they've always been so like nice to me and always throwing opportunities my way.
How involved were you with the movie?
Not too involved with the writing process, because we were still working on the show. So the guys really just kind of did that themselves. And with this guy, Chris Henchy, who's a Funny or Die guy, he directed it and wrote it with them. And he came up with a lot of the narrative ideas. And I basically just did that part where that they wrote for me, that like assistant to Paula Abdul. And they were also like, improvise on set. And like, so when we were filming, they were like, try this and like say something else for this part. And it was really fun, which I have a good amount of background in that. Sorry, my dog is
No, it's okay.
Chew toy. But yeah, so the movie was kind of like that, where it was like I went to where they were filming and I did that scene, but that's kind of about it, and when they were working on the movie, I remember like going to meetings and like, tossing some ideas, like anything that they do. I'm like lucky enough to be in the room and maybe offer up a little advice or offer up a few little ideas, like if it's the live show or the movie. And I think a lot of times I offer up ideas that they don't use, but sometimes they do. And so it's nice just to be involved in that way.
Now, with the whole COVID and everything, like what's their plan to start recording again? Like, are they going to wait it out?
Yeah, I think like they want to be as safe as possible while also doing it as soon as possible, because they know that there's a lot of crew members that rely on this job. And also a lot of fans that want to see the show, and they also are just like want to get out of the house. So they definitely are down to do the show again. And I think that this time has made them like really, not that they needed it, but like really love the show all over again in a new way. They've also been watching more of it, I think, because it's been on and they've been home, which like, is rare. So I think I remember like talking to Sal, and he was like, yeah, I watched Inside Jokes. I love it. I was like, that's so funny, because he's never really watched it. He doesn't have time. I mean, like, they're busy. But yeah, it's so I think that as soon as they feel like it's safe, not only for them and crew, but like the people who the crew and they see, like their family members, they don't want to track it or help. And then we'll have some ideas that are safer first. Like we'll do like maybe focus groups where it's like more contained, less people, more screening, and less just general public messing with people. Cause we don't really, not that we ever mess with people, but like we involve the public. And so we don't want to mess with people's, good times, or like if someone's just going to the grocery store and coming back home, maybe they don't want to be, maybe they don't want to hear Joe blow a fart kiss at them.
Right. Yeah, you're right about that. So you've written a few songs and tunes for the show. Like, what's been like your favorite?
I mean, favorite, it's funny is I just watched the clip where Q is like doing the meditation, and I made this like really dumb meditation song that has this like weird like vocal fry thing in the middle of it. And I made that because I just like the idea of this like bonkers meditation you, but it just cracks everybody up. So that was one I just watched that I was like, oh, that's funnier than that took no work. I basically just like recorded a real ambient track and I laid in like a sample of like an insane voice and changed the effects on it. But in terms of like songs, I've always really liked the Pet Cremation Grandparent Divorce jingle, because I grew up loving jingles like Celino and Barnes, or like just the like Wrigley's or whatever it is. Like I love commercials and like jingles, and so to make one that was like an homage to some of my favorite was that one. So yeah, some of those are my favorite.
What about the Whose Phone Is Ringing?
Yeah, I love it.
You must get asked a lot about that.
A little bit. I mean, yeah, that one's the biggest in a way, because people always want it for like their actual ringtone. And the funny thing about that is there are like people who make fake versions and they sell them, and I think that they've outsold me.
I've seen that last night when I was like on iTunes, I was like looking up a few things and I was like, let me see if this song is on there. And there's like about 7 different versions.
So I don't know what to do, because I think I need to talk to somebody with legal advice, because my first thought was like, if I'm coming at them to like for taking my IP, I think the Baha Men are going to come at me, because it's kind of like, like Who Let the Dogs Out in a weird way, but I don't know, like it's different enough. I made sure to like try to make it different enough, but I'm also like, look, I'm kind of stealing. So, good luck to the scammers.
Yeah.
For, scam-boning me.
Do you come up with like any of the punishment, or is that just like the Jokers?
Yeah, I try to, we all generate ideas. And yeah, definitely. There's definitely some punishments, or even just like when we brainstorm, like I think like I was just thinking, because I saw the clip of it the other day. There's that one where the guy, like we knew that we wanted to get into Sal's house and like when he wasn't home and do some stuff. And so Gatto like loved that idea. He wanted to do that. And he was like, I'll get the key from Sal's mom. We'll go in and film. But like, what do we do? And I think I kind of had the idea to be like, Sal should be presenting like a thing, like a don't sweat the small stuff, so that he's presenting to people like how to keep your cool. Meanwhile, his friends have been like running rampant in his like house. So that gave us sort of a narrative, or like a how to play the idea of like when they're in the house, that like kind of there's no sound and they're just there. The cat's on the bed, he's on his toilet, but like it looks like almost like an infomercial or something. So that's kind of how it works sometimes. It's like maybe one of the Jokers will pitch an idea, and then we'll all kind of like talk about it and see like how we want it the best. And it always like it's never like my idea or your idea, like with the guys or with me. It's usually like everyone just agrees on which one's the best way to play it, and it's like whichever gets the biggest laugh from everybody. It's rare. I mean, I would say it's almost never that anyone's like, no, my idea is better. It's usually just like a rocket ship going up in excitement every time. It's like, what about this, and then it's like that's how the punishment happens.
Is there like a punishment that you regret like making one of the Jokers do? Like it felt bad after a while. You're like, oh man, like maybe we shouldn't have done that. Or
yeah, I mean, there are some that I don't like claim. Like I guess ones where like Sal either has to piss his pants or get pissed on.
Oh, that's not that. Was that in was that in that room where they were locked in?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I don't want to say like it's a bad idea. I just think like, you know what I mean? Like too much, like when it happens where he gets peed on, you're like, what's all this pee play we're doing? But not that I wouldn't say like I regret them. I just think that they're odd compared to some of the other ones. But even so, like there are other ones like where Murr gets like what's it called? What's the thing? A proctal exam or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he gets a second opinion. I mean, we were clamoring for a third opinion, a fourth opinion, because it's something that, like in my mind, it's something that every man kind of should do around 40, and that's where the idea came from. Like Murr should do this; it's good for his health, and there's something to like, like would anyone like to volunteer? And then that's all he has to do in the punishment. And we also know Murr's like limitations and stuff. And not that he likes to do stuff like that, but he does. There's a part of him that knows afterward where he's like in the moment, he's like, this is embarrassing. Afterward, he's like, that's so funny. Like, he's like, I would do the same thing to you guys. That's the thing that we know. That's the secret sauce that we know about the show is like, Q is going to hate this, but then later on, he's going to be like, that was a good idea. That was funny, And that's kind of the thing that we swing for every time. We try to push the limits, but not push it too much.
Well, the Jokers have a pact also. It's like you have to do the punishment or the challenge.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a time where you have to stop filming because they might not do it? Or
the hardest one was the jumping
parachute?
out of the plane. Like, the Murr skydiving. That was the toughest one. But we really knew that he also did have want to get over that fear. And we like he had said like in the past, like privately, like I would jump out of a plane. It terrifies me. I don't want to do it. Like, as like a fun recreational thing, like almost like a bucket list thing.
Yeah.
And then Joe clocks that right into his mind and is like, well, one day I want to do that as like a punishment. But in the moment there, he was like, no, I don't want to do this. I wasn't ready for this. This came out of nowhere. But they knew, like, they were like, Murr, come on. Like, and then they brought up that pact that they had said, like, which is like, you can't turn down a punishment. That being said, like, I mean, like there in challenges, there's times that like Joe has to say something about his wife or something, he won't do it. And the guys know that like in a challenge they could get away with that, but they're not going to make a punishment where they like push her off a cliff or what I mean? Like it's like they're kind people.
As a writer for the show, is it getting harder and harder for you to write things because the Jokers are getting recognized in public?
Yeah, I think but honestly from season 2 that was the case. Like after season 1 I was like, are we gonna have to wear mustaches? And no one knew the show, like relatively. And still it's so often that people don't know the show. But that's like our number one question we get. And the honest answer is like, yeah, it's harder. It gets harder every year. But there's still so many New Yorkers who don't watch the show. Like I have friends that don't even have televisions. And I have close friends that have never watched the show because they just, like it's not what they're into. They watch drama. Like I even don't watch a lot of comedy now. I watch, like I've been binging like Friday Night Lights and Mad Men and The Sopranos. Like that's kind of the shows that I like watch. And then if I am watching TV, it's usually just, anything that Guy Fieri's in, Shark Tank.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
What about challenges for like producing this show?
Good question. Yeah, I think that I try not to let that limit me in coming up with ideas. Like I try to approach everything with the idea that like of the person who doesn't know them. I have come up with some ideas in the world of like actually like being with our fans and they don't know that something's going to happen. I think I could say this here. I pitched an idea recently. I don't know if they're going to do it, but where at a Joker's like meet and greet, they have to dress in camouflage. Like they have to dress as other people, like almost we have a game that's like Nah Dog That Isn't Me, where they have to go up to the same person in different costumes.
Yeah, those were just funny.
Yeah. So I want to do that where like maybe all 4 of them are on the floor, but they've dressed each other or they're allowed to dress themselves around actual fans. And whoever gets called out like last wins. So they dress themselves to sort of like disguise themselves and around other fans at like a meet and greet or something. And like inevitably, I think people will be like, wait, are you Sal? And maybe they take turns interacting. So that's like an idea that's like using the fans, but in a way that they wouldn't even know. Yeah. And like those are people that would sniff out the Jokers immediately. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. But if I get fired, it's your fault.
Oh, thanks. So, how much involvement do you have with the dinner party episodes?
A good amount. They brought me on to help produce those, and the stuff I do with that is like we had an episode where Sal's dad reads Grace, and so like I came up with that and wrote that and with Sal, and we I think Sal like filmed that from, obviously a safe distance. And some stuff with like Q's trainer in the last episode that we just did. I wrote that for Q's trainer. So I'm always kind of trying to generate other ideas, but also talk to them. The thing that I like to do the most is that they have the best ideas, obviously. So I try to talk to them each individually, like the week of the show several times. And I'll be like, what do you want to do? And I'll help them navigate. Like maybe Joe will say, hey, is anybody else having a guest call in? And I'll that the answer is no. So I'll be like, no, there's no guest. So he's like, okay, I'm going to book the guest. So just tell them not to book a guest. And so I'm basically just like the keeper of secrets between the four of them. And there's some stuff that like they all know, like what food is being made, but then I know like who's making who's making meal, Calabash make it or ordering, so that's kind of that's sort of my role, is to help produce them. Or if Joe says to me, hey, I want to get like my family to do this thing with like, and then have like the skeletons at the end be my parents, like these ideas, like I help facilitate that kind of stuff. So it's like coming up with ideas, but also like, fulfilling their dreams.
Are we going to get any more episodes of Inside Jokes?
We just did some new podcast episodes. We went back and did like
I did see that.
Episodes from season 1 and 2 and some early episodes. And we have 2 great ones where Q and Sal are on the podcast for the first time, I think, ever. But so that's sort of what we're doing. But no, in terms of Inside Jokes, we have some other ideas of like little specials and things we could do, but I don't know where they're like kind of living in development land. Like I don't, there's other people higher than me that are making those decisions. So I hope so.
Has there been another season that's already filmed, like ready to come out?
For Jokers?
Yeah.
We have about, I'd say like 2.5 episodes like ready. Really only like 1 or 2 punishments. So we couldn't start airing them because it would be like maybe 2 episodes.
Right.
We talked, I don't know. It would be nice to show them in some capacity because I think like the guys are going to look different by the time we film again. We're going to have to figure out a way to like how we're going to put that already shot stuff together, because there's just been a huge gap. But it's really good stuff. So I'm excited.
So when me and you were emailing back and forth, you mentioned, Matt Cook.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. How'd you guys meet?
Okay. So
he's a funny guy.
Matt Cook, he's the best. He's so funny. I mean, he's like one of the greatest storytellers of all time. He's just like incredible improviser and comedic mind. So he and I went to college together. We met in college. We both really like to drink. The things we drank then and the things we drink now are very different. I think he was like a rum and Mountain Dew guy. And I was probably like a Bacardi and Coke Zero or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like we drank like college kids, I guess. But like we spent a lot of time doing improv together, and like we were just big fans of each other. And we got after college, even though he moved to LA. Like anytime I go to LA, which isn't as much as I think people like quote unquote in the industry would imagine. But anytime I go there, anytime he goes here, each other, we get mad at each other. Like anytime I go there, I like seek him out. I try to spend a good amount of time with him. And if I even like hear that he's even in New Jersey, I'm like, you better come visit. He's such a good guy. And it's cool that you interviewed him for the podcast.
Yeah, and right after that show got canceled, we're like so bummed about it. I emailed him saying,
yeah,
he was pretty bummed out about it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, he's going to be okay, but like, yeah, it's a bummer.
Casey, so what's next for you, man? Any other projects?
During the quarantine, like I did a bunch of like these little music videos for my Instagram, and I encourage people to check that out. I hit like a little creative wall, or it was not so much a wall, but like once I started working on Dinner Party, it was like kind of scratching the itch to make stuff. Yeah. And so it kind of took it away from like just like writing the song, like doing like comedic songs or kind of coming up with my own videos. And also I just feel like there's not really, I personally don't feel like I have a like a venue or like a platform, to create. Like I don't really love Instagram as as a place. I don't like love like a YouTube or Twitter. Like I don't really feel like there's a platform that like speaks to me. Maybe it's TikTok. I doubt it. I don't know. There's something about that I'm like, it just seems like it's there and then it's gone in a way that not that I care so much about my art, but like it's just I'd like something new, something like cooler or something different.
Yeah, I can see that.
Instagram's kind of the best for that kind of thing that I was doing, which was like just making a song with a music video and putting it there. It's like perfect for music videos, but it's also not really what people go there and just endlessly scroll quickly. So it's not really people's attention spans are.
Yeah, I don't even think people read description. They just see a picture and they just click on it.
That's what I think too. But I would like to maybe like I do a podcast with my friend Joe, and that's fun. It's called the JV Squadcast, and we do one every week. We took a little hiatus, but now we're back. We're doing one every week. We rarely miss, and that's like fun. That's like a fun little like therapy fun session with me and my friend. But I'd like to do other kind of podcast stuff. If you have any advice,
I don't know. I mean, you could always. I'm sure you met a lot of people. I'm sure you could always have a guest each week.
Yeah, I guess it's not a bad idea. I wanted to do an idea called. I always love the name Michael. It's a really stupid thing about me, but I wanted to do a podcast where I interviewed like a Michael with a last name that's a Michael with a last name that's B, all the way through Z. And
it could be interesting. You might find some funny characters out there.
I know. I mean, and part of me was like, oh, I could get a lot of people I know. I probably know somebody with every single letter. But I'm dragging my feet on it. But hopefully we get to do some more dinner parties. And so I like being busy and I like being forced to do work rather than coming up with my own work. I don't know. Right. Probably other people feel that way too. It's hard to sometimes find the motivation. And now I got to take care of a puppy. So
that's a lot of work too. No kids, right? Do you have kids?
No kids. No kids on the horizon so far. No.
Maybe in the future.
I don't know. It's hard to say. This is it's a bleak time. I hate to say it, but even before that, I was always kind of on the fence. Now, I say this because I talk about this very openly. But like, if I have a child and that child is listening to the Man Cave Chronicles podcast right now, then I apologize that I said that. But as for now, as where I am right now, I don't want you, kid.
Casey,
sorry, kid.
How can the listeners find you on social media?
It's at Casey Jost, pretty much everywhere except for TikTok. I missed out. I don't really have a TikTok, and I think somebody else stole my name. So don't go there for me. IJOST.
All right, Casey. This was fun. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's delightful to talk to you.
That's a wrap. That's a wrap, everybody. That's a wrap.
Thanks for listening to the Man Cave Chronicles podcast.
I finally get my man cave.
You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at the MCC Podcast and our website, themccpodcast.com. Until next time.